Hello guys, this is Eli and I'm back for another review. I know it's been a while. I've been a little busy, but we're going to go ahead and get into Avet's best reel versus Penn's best reel. We're going to be comparing the Avet Raptor JX against the Penn Torque 30 lever drag 2-speed. Both of them are 2-speed. Now, to begin with, I want to let you know that the Penn Torque is far more expensive than the Avet reel Raptor. The Avet reel will run you $467. The Penn Torque will run you $579. So there's definitely like a $110 difference there just off the block. Be warned that the Torque is a tiny bit more expensive. Now, how do they both compare in size? Well, they're basically almost the same reel. I feel like the JX is probably a quarter of an inch taller than the Torque. Okay, I'm not sure how good you guys can see that, but there's a slight difference in height, and we'll get more into that as the video goes in deeper with what I've got to share today. Now, the Avet Raptor produces 38 pounds at max drag. The Penn Torque produces 33 pounds at max drag. As far as the retrieve rate, the Avet Raptor is faster than the Torque. At high speed, it'll give you 46 inches per crank, and the Penn Torque will give you 38 inches. In low gear, the Avet Raptor will give you 22 inches. In low gear, the Torque will give you 19 inches. Now, is line retrieve rate important? It is for me, because I usually use these reels to yo-yo and to cast iron. I cast a lot of mega bait jigs, and when I toss them out there, sometimes I feel like I have to retrieve at a good speed to be able to land a fish. Not all the time, but when it's necessary, it's good to have a reel that is fast. So like I said, one of them's going to give you 46 inches, the other one's going to give you 38. There's definitely a difference there. Now let's go ahead and talk about line capacity. The Avet will give you 65, the Avet will give you 400 yards at 65 pound braid. The Torque 30 will give you 500 yards at 65 pound braid. So there's definitely a difference there because, like I mentioned, the Avet is narrow and the Torque 30 is not. Now, what I don't like on the Avet website is that they don't tell you how much it can hold as far as mono goes. I kind of don't like that, but I came up with some numbers here. They're pretty accurate. So basically the Avet would hold 235 yards of 30 pound mono. The Torque will give you 300 yards of 30 pound mono. So the Torque 30 definitely holds more line. So it's basically 235 versus 300 at 30 pound mono. So this is going to give you more line. But because there's braid under these reels, it doesn't really matter, right? Another thing that I want to discuss here is the weight. The Avet Raptor is 24 ounces, while the Penn Torque is 21 ounces. Now, when I'm casting the reels, can I feel a difference? Is there really a difference in weight? I can't feel a thing. I guess 3 ounces is almost nothing. So that doesn't bother me at all. It might not bother you, it might. Perhaps it's a mental thing, I'm not sure, but I don't see that there's a big a difference in ounces. Now, there's a few more things that I want to discuss. The handles on them are pretty similar. The length of the handles are pretty similar. So there isn't really much to say there. I can tell you that the Avet Raptor has this interesting little ratchet system that lets you know when you're increasing the drag or dropping the drag. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's little pinholes in there. Now there's a pin inside of the lever drag that every time you push forward, it lands in the pin, and that's that little clicking noise that you hear. I guess that's fine. Depends on who you're asking, right? You basically switch gears by pressing this button here. You're in the low gear, and when you click this little lever here, you're back on high gear. That's basically the difference between these both. As with the Penn torque, there's this big gold knob that you press. You're in low gear, you turn, and you're back in high gear. So that's obviously different. The lever drag here also clicks. And I don't have a problem with either or. So I just somehow feel like this mechanism looks a tiny bit more generic than what Penn is using. As far as the gearbox goes, they're both about the same size, so there's not much to say there. Let's go ahead and talk about cast control. One of the main reasons why I got into Avet is because they have this neat thing on the side that's got a cast control. It's got a setting from 1 to 5. 1, basically if you have it set on 1, you'll be able to make a cast, and if you're having a trouble thumbing the spool, you might end up with the bird's nest. But if you get all the way up to number 4 or 5, I can tell you that it casts like a dream. And at first I didn't believe that till I started to use these, and I realized that there was very little thumbing needed to stop a bird's nest from happening. They really don't happen on the Avet Raptors because of the cast control. Penn does not have that. I'm not sure why they haven't implemented something like that, but I'm sure it's got something to do with cost. Now, if this is $110 more, I'm not sure why I wouldn't have it. So if you're having trouble casting, I recommend the cast control for sure. Okay. Now, there's an Avet that's called the SX. It's definitely smaller than the JX. It weighs less, it gives you less drag, and it costs about the same thing as a JX. So if you have an option, I would go for the JX, just because let's assume that you're using your Raptor for a 25-pound line, and you know, sure, the SX would be perfect, but let's say that one day you're going to go on a nice fishing trip, 2-day, 3-day, and you want to go ahead and set up the JX with braid and a nice 50-pound top shot. The Avet Raptor will definitely be able to handle that. And if you go ahead and invest in an SX, sure, it's small and great, but then you just might have to buy another reel for that long trip, and it's just an extra expense I don't see necessary. Another thing I want to touch on is that I feel like cosmetic wise, the Penn torque is nicer. It has engraving, okay, and that's really neat. It definitely gives it a more expensive feel and look. I know that the serial number has been engraved here, and it's pretty deep. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's definitely deep. Now, the Avet, it doesn't look like it's engraved. It almost feels like there's a sticker, or like a real fine sticker there. And that's interesting, because if it rubs off, then I guess it'll be hard to read, right? But it is $110 cheaper. So, like I said, I definitely feel like the craftsmanship is better on the Penn torques. But you know, then again, that's $110 that you're paying for extra. It's really up to you guys. They're both pretty good reels. I want to go ahead and talk about the drag system. This uses a dry carbon drag washers. The Penn Torque uses a greased HT100. I've had fish pull on the reels, and I can tell you that the Avet, when a fish pulls, it feels like it wants to jerk. Like it's just like a real dry drag system. And I can tell you that the Penn Torque is really smooth, silky smooth. So it just depends on your taste, right? It might be an issue to some, it might not be an issue to others. But I just feel, just holding them, I feel like the craftsmanship is definitely better on the Penn Torques. I mean, Jesus, let's just look at the boxes. I somehow feel like I got this at Walmart, and I feel like I got this at a higher end store. I'm not sure why Avet is cutting back on things that are making its products look cheap. I mean, if you look at the picture, it's in black and white. They couldn't even produce a color picture. So that gives you a sense that the reel might be cheap. You know, it's not cheap, but I'm not sure what they're thinking when they do things like that. Anyway, the Avet Raptor, in my opinion, has a weak clicker. It's kind of faint, and someone might care, someone might not. I feel like the Torque has a stronger reel. I mean, a stronger clicker. So that's something else you might want to consider. So that's basically it, guys. I like the speed that this gives you to yo-yo, cast iron. I love the cast control. I like the craftsmanship on the Penn Torque. I like the feel to it. I like the drag, the smooth drag. So if I had to pick a reel to live with, I would have to pick the Penn Torque. Just because it looks and feels more expensive than the Avet Raptor. I've opened up the reels, and I can tell you that the Penn Torque is very easy to work on. I've not needed any tune-ups on it. It's been great so far. The Avet Raptor, I'm still kind of new to it, but no issues there. So if you were to ask me, am I ready to sell all of my Penn Torques and exchange them for Avet Raptors? Not so fast. I would hold on to the Penn Torques, definitely. But it's important as fishermen for us to test other reels, because if we're just stuck on a particular reel or on a particular company, then when somebody talks about another reel and we throw dirt on it and not know much about it, makes us kind of ignorant. So it's kind of important for us to get used to touching other reels, perhaps buying a reel, testing it out for yourselves, and give a fair assessment of what you feel like. What I'm basically saying today is just an opinion, my personal opinion, my experience with what's happening here. Like I said, the JX it's a pretty good reel. I like it because it's narrow, but then again, the Penn Torque has a 25N narrow. So basically, it comes down to, do you like the cast control? Do you need the cast control? Are you ever gonna learn a cast? If you're not, definitely get the cast control. But if you feel like you're thumbing correctly, like you don't get any bird's nest, then I would encourage you to get the 25 Torque N. In comparison to the JX, it's going to be a better reel, in my opinion. Well, that's it for today, guys. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and leave them down in the comments. I usually check my channel, and I'll help you out with whatever I can or with whatever I know. Thank you so much for watching.